Hello, insiders, and welcome to this new episode of the EU Bubble Insider. Today, our guest is Gonçalo Carriço, head of the Digital Public Policy and EU Corporate Affairs at the Santander Bank. Gonçalo, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So, looking at your past career, it seems that the position you're holding right now is the connection of your two biggest passions, so digital technology and policy. Is that right?
Yeah, indeed. Actually, I was my background comes from computer engineering, and I worked on many different areas in computer engineer back in Portugal. And when I arrived in Brussels, I merged that experience with policy making, EU policy making, indeed.
And could you tell us a little bit more about your current role at the Santander Bank? What it is you do, what kind of messages you're trying to promote in your role?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, for Santander Group, I'm responsible to coordinating the digital policy side in Brussels. So as you know, the financial sector has been also through a process of being transformed digitally as well. And of course, since there is policies being horizontal or sectorial impacting the group, we have to work on them here in Brussels, and that's where I come in. And there is also another part of that's one in the regulatory side. The other side is somehow showcasing what the financial sector is doing, in particular at Bank as a Santander, because we also provide a lot of innovation to our products and our customers. And sometimes that innovation, or if you think about innovative companies, maybe a bank is not on top of your head. But as a matter of fact, it's you use already a lot of technology on a daily basis in relation with financial sector. You use a lot of technology in the background, and that's also somehow showcasing what the financial sector and Santander in particular does in terms of innovation and for the benefit of our consumers.
Discussing innovative technologies with lawmakers is not, and it's a challenge because you need to first explain a lot about those technologies and what it is you're actually trying to innovate. But before we get into that, I would still like to stay a little bit in the sphere of your past experiences, because they are super interesting, and you have an impressive career behind you. One of the things that I found particularly interesting is that you spent over 8 years in the Portuguese Navy, and I wanted to ask how has that shaped you, and how has that developed maybe some leadership and or problem solving skills that help you in your career today.
So you dig deep on my profile. Yes, indeed. Well, I started my career in the Portuguese Navy doing military services. I did the military service. I was mandatory by then, and I stayed for 8 years. I did somehow a career there as a military, and also the last part of that career was already working on IT. And as a matter of fact, military education shapes you a lot in terms of personality, in terms of perseverance, in terms of respect, in terms of being collaborative. I mean, you have to work as a team. You were mentioned leadership and problem solving. And when you are in a warship at sea, you depend on everybody. So you need leadership in order to know where to go and how to go, and you need a teamwork in order to reach that point where you want to go. So everybody has to work as a team, no matter If you like the person that is working with you, no matter if the person is nice to you or not, at the end of the day, you have to work together, and that's what it shaped it somehow, my behavior and also my attitude towards my life, which has been always in the part of being respectful and also teamwork, collaborative with many people. And in terms of leadership, I think the most important thing is having. There's a say actually in that regard in the Navy that worse than a bad decision is no decision at all, and that shapes somehow leadership style that you have to have in this kind of environment. And as a matter of fact, in your daily life, you also have to take a lot of decisions. But I tend to agree that not taking a decision is worse than taking a bad decision.
I think this is very wise words, especially in the EU bubble, where the decision-making process is not always as fast as we would wish it to be.
Indeed.
So, Gonzalo, you finished the military career and join the IT sector, which is a very innovative, thriving sector with lots of opportunities. And I'm wondering, what makes you transition from IT to the political sector, which by that time when you joined the political sector wasn't that innovative as we can call it now.
Yeah, indeed. Well, as a matter of fact, well, the IT sector, it's quite demanding. It's also quite demanding. When I started, I was a software developer and software engineer, and that it's highly demanded to your brain. Nowadays you have tools as the AI that you just do me a program and he writes all the code. By then, when I was a programmer, we needed to write everything by hand, even a small button. He has to be coded. So it was quite intensive. It's true that after that developer phase, I then start working on more on infrastructure projects, um, and also on implementing software solutions that will radically change processing the organizations. And that was more. I mean, from one side, when you want to develop, you create stuff. The other side, you implement other stuff, but it is also transformational because you change processes. So it was a period of my life. It was very interesting. Building stuff, creating stuff is quite exciting. Implementing them and changing processes, changing how organizations work is quite interesting. Connecting people when you're talking about infrastructure, I remember I was connecting offices that were spread everywhere in Portugal an organization. So it was quite interesting, but it's also demanding in terms of your brain. And then when I moved to Brussels, it just happened. It was an opportunity. I was not looking for it. Actually, it happened because there was this moment where digital policies were becoming or were start to becoming a thing, were start to become a policy, because if I remember well, during Barroso's commission, there was a lot of digital policy, but they were not treated as a policy. So there were initiatives and legislative pieces spread everywhere. And the first commission who tried to put it into a concise and understandable policy, it was the Juncker's Commission with the digital single market. And I just happened to be at TPP by then, and worked what was somehow the before that, during the preparatory for his campaign. And then, since it became a policy, I started working on that policy as a whole, taking into account that there's always limited resources, but since they had at hand somebody who understands somehow the technological side and then translate it into policy terms. There was a learning curve that I had to go through. I was knowledge about technology, but policy making was another story. So I had to study again. Even the EU to me was a puzzle that I have to understand how it works, how policy making is done, and have to fit all together. Then my technology knowledge with policy knowledge, and at the end of the day, what was the biggest challenge was to be somehow the translator in between technology and policy. I think that was the key element, and it made me advanced in this field.
So, being this newcomer to the EU bubble, you said you had to learn a lot. How did you learn how policy making works? Where did you? Because that was more or less, if I am right, 10 years ago. There weren't that many digital sources as we have right now to learn about how that works. What was your approach to that? How did you learn how it's done?
You mean the policy making, the EU
Yeah.
policy making? Yeah. Well, being embedded in a political organization, somehow you already learn how policy making is done in other areas. I mean, economic policies, social policies, they have been always embedded in this ecosystem, and by being there, you get fed, uh, you get fitted into how it's made and how it should be made. But as a matter of fact, I needed to have more a structured way of learning. So I got information how it's made and how it's structured, pieces here and there. But then you need a proper education in order to make all that knowledge in the proper boxes. And that's where I did a post graduation here in Brussels on EU policy making, exactly. Also to learn a bit about the treaties, I learn a bit about law, I learn somehow how the institutions work, how they coordinate themselves, how is the legislative process, because it's quite complex, as you know. So all that made the knowledge fit into the proper boxes, and that's where I got a bit of a upward learning curve on this field.
So you have this quite unique experience of working both for the private and the public sector and the political sector. So these are sort of actors who are in constant dialogue. What have you learned from this experience of seeing both sides of this dialogue, that maybe each sides could learn from each other? What should the private sector know better about talking to lawmakers, and also lawmakers maybe understanding the private sector in a better way?
Being on the political side, sometimes you get a bit out of touch of how things are done, how things are implemented, how things work, um, how things take time to implement, the impact of it. You can read a lot, but it's you get a grasp. I mean, you don't need to know all in detail. You get a grasp, but in some particular issues, maybe a bit deeper knowledge will be at hand. And on the private side, you have that experience, so you get to know how things are done, how things are implemented, how things cost, what is the impact of your policies. You get to know it firsthand, and that's very interesting. On the other side, being a private sector and then engaging with the policy side and politics side, sometimes um, I think we need to help. I think we need to help policymakers work. because, as you know, they got so many competing propositions and suggestions that and that's why they are decision makers. But we have to help them make those decisions. So, and the way to help them is simplifying the way we communicate and the way we engage with them, and give them the right information and the right time, and the way and the format they usually read and understand, not the way we think we should give our messages or our understanding. So this is somehow trying to put yourself in the other person's shoes, and it works both sides. So when you are in the private sector towards policymakers and vice versa. So it's always trying to put yourself in the other person's shoes, and see, would I like to receive this kind of information? Would I read it? The message that I got in discussing, is the right tone? Is this the right message that I should carry on to him? So I think it's just putting yourself on other person's shoes, and you will see immediately the difference.
I think this is very practical advice, and I'm wondering if there are maybe some other lessons that you have learned while working at the EPP, the European People's Party, that are helping you today, that making you more efficient at your work today in the private sector.
I mean, you always learn. You always have. You always have a different perspective. When you see things from inside out, you have a different perspective. But that doesn't make you be better or worse than somebody who was never there. I think the idea, as I said, maybe that's what I learned, is that it's trying to get to the people the information they need, the way they need it, and the right time. Because I mean, sometimes just pressing on a paper or a position paper, and it's even the way you draft it. You have to be concise, readable. You have to understand that that person maybe will receive 200 papers. So try to imagine yourself on that position, and see if you have to read 200 papers, and mostly about about companies or people that you don't really know on how they work, and with complex language sometimes. So it's a matter of what I learned is that it's a matter of trying to understand the other side, and provide the means and the information on the right time. I think that's the added value, but not more or less than everybody else.
So, if you would be talking to an outsider, someone not involved in the daily life of EU policy debates, what are the most pressing issues concerning digital policy right now? What is the EU currently? What are the challenges for the European Union in digital policy?
I mean, the EU in digital policy has, I think, globally, we have to understand, and the EU has to understand, that digital doesn't know borders. And that's the first thing you have to have in mind when you're legislating. You're thinking on your jurisdiction, you're thinking on the EU. Sometimes even the EU then gets a bit fragmented at national level. But as a matter of fact, digital knows no borders. It doesn't know there is a border between Portugal and Spain, or between Europe and Africa, or Asia. It doesn't know that, unless you create walls. But that's a different story. So that's the first principle. And then, if digital knows no borders, the best way to tackle or to address the issues that stem from digital policy or the digital ecosystem is to address them globally. Digital is like climate change, somehow, because you can address them in Europe, but if elsewhere if they didn't address in the same way, then either you get less from the digital technology, or you get less competitive, or you just close in yourself and you lose opportunities, or there is situations where you don't have access to the best technology. So that's why in the digital side we should look at it in a global perspective, not just the EU. That's what I would say. If you look at AI, for instance, which is something maybe that everybody would know and understand nowadays because we talked a lot, how to address, for instance, the issue of disinformation. You, if it's not just if you don't address it globally, which is it's difficult, but at least um, having in the same principles globally, it's going to be difficult. Or how do you address cybersecurity? How do you address automation or autonomous machines uh, driven by AI? How you relate AI with defense? Now that I have also the defense side from my past, so how you address that? You have to talk about these issues globally. Then in the EU specifically, I would say the best tool for us to prepare, the best tool for digital policy for the EU citizens would be education. It's not only a social elevator for people, but I think the way digitalization is progressing, the speed that it's progressing, I think education is not, or either our education infrastructures and structures are not prepared to cope with it. Also, I mean, what I mean is that they are not giving the right skills to kids and youngsters in order to be prepared in a digital world. And what I mean with this is not that we will have to teach everybody how to code or something like that. I don't mean that, because um, coding, as a matter of fact, is like mathematics. You just give you capacity to reasoning um, and to be logical, which is a good skill, by the way. But you don't need to coding to teach that. So, but critical, looking at critical reasoning and the way people behave online, the way we should be prepared to take care of our privacy or our data online, the way we engage online, our behavior online. I think it should be taught at school, and then also prepare them for new kind of professions or roles that they are not the typical ones. But in this sense, what you have to teach them is not being lawyers or being architects or being engineers, is teaching them how to adapt to change, because that's the only constant that they will know in their career is changing. Me myself, I already changed area and profession a couple of times, comparing to my parents who were their entire career in the same profession, and one of them even in the same company for his whole life. So I mean, this doesn't happen anymore. Even you might end up having in the future people working for different employees or different companies at the same time in different places in the world. So that's adaptability is I think adaptability, communication, and critical thinking, I think, is really, really important. But as a matter of fact, this is something to be addressed within the EU, but the EU itself doesn't have a strong competence on education. Um, but it could give a huge push to member states to go um, deeper in the education side, take some examples in other member states that are working. If I'm on top of my head, perhaps in Finland, they have a good education model. So this is the kind of things I think that you should address with more urgency.
It's interesting that you speak about the need to adapt, because one of the key words of the EU Year of Skills that we are within right now, that is happening right now. This year is the EU Year of Skills, is reskilling, and it's especially a burning topic in the energy industry. But I wanted to ask you one more thing about actually discussing the challenges, because you have a lot of experiences talking to MEPs, European Commission, and I'm sure you meet people who are very well educated about the topic, but also those who need explaining, who need to be shown what are the technologies, what are the challenges, and so on and so forth. What is your approach to make sure that the discussion you have, because if these digital challenges are everywhere, from finances to healthcare, now with AI, for me it causes the risk that the discussion you might have will be overwhelming for everyone, because there are so many challenges, so many problems to solve. How do you make sure that the political debate around digital policy stays focused on something that is actually solvable, that is actually approachable and understandable?
Well, it depends at the level you speak to. When you talked about on to a political level, it's about priorities and direction, where we want to go. And then when you talk about a more a technical level, is implementing, is translating into practical pieces of the problem to achieve the goal that was set by the priorities. And there you just have to break down in the problem in addressable pieces. You look at the bigger picture, you define the priorities, the focus, you identify properly what is the issue you try to address, and then you discuss the solutions. That's how I mean, if you try to build a house, that's how it's made, right? So you want to build a house. Where you want to build a house, you have all the area for how the house to be built, and then you have different problems to address, right? And you will break down those problems into small packages and solve it as you start building the house. So this is how I think it should be done, and then you have to adapt, of course, your own language and your own explanations according to the person you have in front of you. I mean, you cannot explain technical details to a person who is just looking at what are the priorities and the goals. Samely, you cannot just explain or try to set some priorities to a person who is implementing already those who were set before, and you just have to adapt somehow. What is your you have your language and the technicality to the person you have in front of you. Sometimes you have conversations who are really deep technically, because the person you have in front of you also challenges you with questions because they are at ease with the topic. And with others, you have to make a bit of an effort to try to explain in simple terms, and then drive to the technical part in a way that they will understand the context.
Gonçalo, after working, correct me if I'm wrong, but for more than 10 years in the EU bubble already, is there, if you would have the chance to change something, that would potentially have game-changing impact on how the EU bubble works, how things work for professionals like you working in the EU bubble. If you would have the chance to just pick one thing and change it, what would that be?
That's a very interesting question. Because I would change the I would change the way legislation is made. I mean, it's a maze. Um, when you think about it, let me put an example. We were talking about AI. For how many committees in the parliament the AI file went through? I mean, so the way the commission, the way the council and the parliament are organized, it doesn't fit really the digital space. You still have council configurations called telecoms. So, I mean, it was 20 years ago about telecoms. Today is not just about telecoms. It's telecoms, but it's much more than that. Actual telecoms became a smaller part of it. And if you look at the commission, there's also the DGs. One is responsible for digital, but I'm also addressing digital with DG FISMA on digital finance. And sometimes it seems that there's difficulties in between those DGs. And in the European Parliament, you have plenty of committees. When a digital file, or a file with a digital flavor lands in the Parliament, it's always a mess to know where it's going to land, who's going to be responsible. And sometimes it ended up with something that I found a bit ridiculous, which is assigning articles to committees. And I mean, that creates a lot of difficulties for us who are working in this side to follow, to make sense out of it. And it's quite complex. So that will be the single thing that I would change, is simplifying somehow the way legislation is addressed in the three institutions, in particular in the digital file. I mean, maybe in other areas it's fine, but on digital, I think it's quite since it is horizontal, like climate change. It's so horizontal that maybe you should have a different kind of ad hoc structure to deal with these issues.
That would definitely be a game changer if this would
Yeah.
really change. I think one of the most important skills to have to be successful in this space is the ability to build relationship, to be a good networker. And I'm interested to hear if you have some experiences that you would share with younger colleagues who want to learn how to be a good networker in the EU bubble.
I've never thought about that as such, but I think being a good networker is about human relations. And in human relations, you have to create empathy with people. And for that, you just need to be nice. You have to be polite, respect each other's space. Um, and in order to create trust in the relationship with those to whom you connect, you need to be, as I said, to create empathy and also to be helpful. I mean, this is, I think, the basic that I could say, but it's equally important not only in Brussels, but also when you are talking to people, even with your neighbors, or in at school, if you have kids, with other parents, or in activities and sport activities. I play football. I also do this kind of networking. But at the end of the day, is just talking to people and making human interactions. And for that, you just I think you just have to keep in mind respecting others' space, being nice, polite, and create empathy, by creating this trust relationship and be helpful. I think that's the key element.
Gonçalo, given your past experience in the political sector with the European People's Party, I have to ask about the upcoming European elections next year. Do you have what are your thoughts about what should we expect? I'm wondering if we will, in terms of the digitalization of the campaigns, will we maybe witness some revolutions or either an evolution of how campaigns are, how strategy is done, and how it's executed?
Well, that I will be curious to see. Now, from the outside, I will be curious to see how different players will play the digital card. There's many different techniques. There are many different tools, and personally, I still think that there's still no real European campaign, and it's still based on 27 national campaigns. So it loses somehow this EU dimension. I would love to see in the future a truly European campaign among all European political parties competing, where all EU citizens will be engaged on. But we are still far from that. So to be honest, I really don't know how it's going to be played at EU level. At the national level, I think you're going to have somehow a repetition of what is done at national level for other elections, for local or national elections. So there, if they have been using digital tools and digital strategies, they will apply them. What is important to note, though, is in terms of technology, and that citizens, and that's why I mentioned education before, about disinformation. People have to be more, political parties need to be also on the education side, authorities as well, in order to enable citizens to discern what is real, what is not real, what is true, what is not true, and not to tell them what is true or not is true, but to help them for themselves discern and filter the amount of information that they receive daily. And as you know, with AI, that will be exacerbated at some point, with deep fakes, with generating massive amounts of fabricated information. So that's where I think all of them, be it the EU level or national level, we must be a concern for all the authorities, all the political parties, and ourselves, citizens as well, in trying to educate ourselves and try to teach those who are around you. I try to do that, for instance, with my family, with my parents, but it's not easy. It's not easy. So that's, I think, this is the key element that I would see for European elections, the upcoming European elections. Because also the geopolitical context that we have around us is not the most favorable one. So I expect massive disinformation to come, and some of them you don't see it because it's targeted. So that's where I'm more concerned. Not really what type of tools or strategies they will be applying in the online world. But again, if you apply the strategy or apply digital tools, be ethical and responsible.
You mentioned AI a couple of times already today.
Yeah, I've been working on AI for so long.
Gonçalo, when you hear the very common fear that AI is going to take over our jobs, will take away our jobs, what's your response to that?
To be honest, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. because for two reasons. The first one, personally, I still think that AI is still stupid. It's not really intelligent. We are still far away from having intelligent AI. What we are seeing today with large language models and with chat GPTs and the likes, and is just they get better at statistics. So they predict which is the best word after each other, in order to provide something that it resembles to communication, to interaction, to Q&A. But as a matter of fact, it's still, I mean, a 5 or 6 year old kid can trick ChatGPT. So they are still stupid. What allowed this to happen was computing power and the availability of data. And then that's an important element to look at also in the EU, the way we want to use these tools, because you can use it for different for many different areas, and for the good and for bad as well. In terms of jobs, that's what I think AI can help us in automatizing some of our tasks. Replacing jobs entirely, I don't see it, because our roles are made of different tasks, and some of those tasks can be improved and helped by AI. I mean, I myself, one of the things that it costs me a lot, either when I was an engineer and now when I have to write something, is a blank sheet. So starting from scratch, it's to me it's somehow painful. As soon as I start the first paragraph or the first line of code, then it's a flow. But a blank sheet is complicated, and then I can help, of course, provide you ideas, provide you structure, provide you some information, summarizing information, something, when you have loads of legislation, long papers, position papers and things like that. It's very helpful to spare you time reading all that stuff. It doesn't mean that you don't have to read it. At some point, if you see that something might, you feel it as your human trait, that it doesn't look right, then you have to check it. What's going to happen as well is that we will become less doers and more controllers, or more revisers. So AI will do some things, and we will see if it did it right. It's kind of editors, in a sense, of AI's work. By replacing entirely jobs, either jobs will be replaced by themselves, meaning that job doesn't make sense anymore or cease to exist, but it's not because of AI, it's because it doesn't make any sense. The jobs that will be still standing, many of the tasks will be made by AI, or will be helped by AI. So AI will enhance our capacity to be more productive, and ultimately to spare some time.
So I think it's enough talking about technologies and digital policy. But since you are the digital technology and digital policy expert, I have to ask you one last question, and that is about actually disconnecting from those technologies. And what is your personal take on that? What is your method to guard your well-being? We're recording this on a Friday, so I'm sure you have some weekend plans that are not all technology related. I'm asking this question to most of my guests to find out best ways to disconnect from those jobs that are most of the case not 9 to 5 jobs, and tend to overlap with our private time. What's your take on that, Gonçalo?
It's quite difficult to disconnect when you have a job that is demanding. It requires a lot of your attention, but I think there's at least for me, 2 ways to disconnect is dedicating time to your family and friends. take care of your garden if you have one. Be at home. Cook. I like to cook during weekends as well. It releases my thoughts. And since very early age, I played sports, and I was in the Navy, so I had to do sport anyway. That's something that I brought from that time, and I still do sport. And I think when I'm doing, in particular, I do football. I play football as well, and time to time I step by the gym. It helps me. It helps me to completely disconnect from work, completely disconnect from devices. Because I don't carry with me either on football or the gym. I don't carry with me, and that is of particular interesting because I'm so worried in breathing when I'm doing sport that I don't have time to think about work or other issues, and also allows me to disconnect, refresh, give oxygen to my brain, to help me think when I have to be active or connected in our work life. But these two things, being with family, doing activities together, going to cinema, I like to go to the cinema or theater, comedy, watching comedy concerts. It's something that I really enjoy, and also doing sport. Yeah, that's the two things.
I think that I like the advice, especially to not take your device with you to some activities. I think this
I
is
still see so many people at the gym with their mobile phone. I don't know what is the purpose, but
well, I don't think purpose is the right word. It's addiction that we all kind of suffer from. So thank you for sharing this advice that there's actually a better way to do it. I very much enjoyed the conversation with you, Gonçalo. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone who listened to us today or watched us on YouTube. Gonçalo, thank you very much for your time and all this valuable
Really enjoyed
advice
the conversation.
that you shared.
Thank you. I really enjoyed the conversation as well. Take care.